Hello everybody, it's me, Rhoku, in my very first video game review. Now, I'm mainly known for making League of Legends videos and occasionally some memes here and there, so this is a new kind of content that I'm dipping into. I've always been meaning to voice my concerns and opinions on some video games because I think that I can bring up the perspective of the player, the gamer, and this is a perspective that is unfortunately just ignored by the more mainstream reviewers like IGN and such. Those kind of guys, the game journalist sort, just treat video games like art. And that's not a bad thing per se, but it seems that people prefer video games to be art over being actually good video games, right? If a video game makes a brave artistic statement, but it is also a piece of shit to play, it's a piece of shit video game, like objectively, because the purpose of the game is to be played, and these game journalists don't really do that justice. They're also just, 30-year-old boomers who can't get through Cuphead tutorials, so yeah, I think we need a person who can more understand the perspective of the gamer to bring out these reviews, and that's what I'm going to be trying to do. So yeah, let's just get right into it. The first game we'll be looking at today is this cute little game that I released a few weeks ago called Madness Project Nexus. This game is basically a 2.5D beat-em-up that is set in Nevada. No, not the Nevada that we know, but the one where the Madness Combat series takes place. For those of you who don't know, Madness Combat is basically an old animation series with a ton of kick-ass, fast-paced action, and gore, where guys with these weird pluses on their heads beat, stab, slash, bash, shoot, and blow the absolute shit out of each other. The game features a story mode, where you play as the pre-established characters from the animations to stop the Project Nexus. Like, the game is essentially a 3D adaptation of a 2D animation series, right? So, yeah. The story mode also allows for cooperative play, using Steam Remote Play, so you can play on your mouse keyboard and your friend can play on their, controller. And, yeah. The second major game mode is the Arena mode, where you basically create your own character from ground up. Now, unlike the main game mode, where you start out as these badass characters, in Arena mode, you level your character up from scratch. Like, your character can't really throw any punches, do any cool moves, they can't even run properly. So, you really have to start from nothing and build your character up as they basically morph into this insanely badass killer, essentially. Just this cool action hero, Now, by going into missions in Arena mode, you get experience, and with experience, you can branch out into different playstyles for your character. Some characters are better at ranged combat, some characters are better at melee combat, some are better unarmed. You just have to pick the one that's the most fun for you and just go for it. You can also get money, which you can use to arm your character with an insane variety of weapons. Pistols, swords, hammers, knives, guns, SMGs, shotguns, assault rifles, just everything you can think of is in this game. You can also use the money to buy clothes and armor for your character to make them look cool as hell as they destroy hordes upon hordes of enemies. You can also use the money to hire people to come with you on missions, and the best part is, the people you hire kind of level up with you. They kind of join your organization, so it's just a very, very neat, fun thing where, you kind of just not only level your own character up, but you level your squad up with you. Okay, so now that we're done with, describing the game, let's just get into the review of the game. The fundamental thing about the game that will instantly let you know whether it's for you or not is that it's fun if you play it right. Now, what do I mean by that? Madness Project Nexus is not an easy game. I mean, sure, you can lower the difficulty settings and, have an easier time with the game, but unless you're willing to master the skill-dependent mechanics of the game, or at least have an idea of how they work, you're not going to access the more fun parts of the game. Let's cover one mechanic to understand how the rest of the game works. In the game, different guns have different effective ranges, okay? So snipers have longer effective ranges, pistols are a bit shorter, and in the game, this effective range is marked on the ground by this green area. Now, if you shoot someone while they're outside of this green area, meaning if they're closer than it or farther than it, then they'll just have a few blood holes in them, they'll just bleed and they'll keel over and die, basically, right? It's a normal animation, but it isn't anything fun or cool to look at. Now, if you shoot them while they're inside the green area, they just blow up into this insanely satisfying gore that's just sends a rush of dopamine to your brain. That really gives you the idea of what the game is all about. It's not really a time abyss like WoW or whatever, but it is a game that requires you to get good at its mechanics to really enjoy it. It's kind of like Hotline Miami. The more you learn about the game, the more fun you're gonna have with it, and the game is pretty deep when it comes to the combat. So deep that there's a sense of freedom that comes with the game. You're basically dropped into the level and told to kill everyone in the room. No one cares how you get it done, just that it's done. Everyone's dead. That's it. You can just choose how you do it. You can do it stealthily. You can, go in guns blazing. You can have your squad hold an area of the map and just play a bit more defensive. There's a lot of ways you can just combat the enemy, and the types of enemies, while a bit limited, is various enough to keep you on your toes and force you to find new strategies that work in beating them, just like, on the spot. The game is kind of streamlined, as at the end of the day, all you're doing is reducing the amount of people alive in a room to 0, but the number of ways you can do that is where the core of the fun of this game is, in my opinion. You can basically just make your own playstyle, which is a big draw to the core game. Having heard all this, you might come to the conclusion that the arena mode is way more fun than the story mode. And you'd be right, because the sheer amount of control you get from the arena mode is absolutely amazing. Now, the story isn't really horrible or whatever, but unless you've been a longtime fan of the series, you won't really care too much about the plot. It's more so like a string of loosely connected excuses for you to just massacre rooms upon rooms of agents, zombies, bandits, and just whatever at this point. And honestly, I think that's a bit intended because the game doesn't really take itself too seriously. You should, if you get the game, just go through the story at least once, but you're gonna lose most of your time in the arena mode. The visuals of the game aren't really the best because there is quite a bit of jankiness to it. Things are weirdly shaped and whatnot. It is an adaptation of a 2D animated series to a 3D game, so obviously it's not gonna look great, but this weird look of the game is probably the most off-putting thing about it, because if you just look at it without even like playing it, whatever, you're gonna be like, okay, what is this bizarre bullshit? I'm not gonna buy it, But let me tell you that if you do kind of get used to all the weird graphics, there's a very nice game deep within that has a ton of content just waiting for you. Speaking of the ton of content, the sheer amount of content packed into the game is amazing. The story mode is 6 hours long or so, which rivals the length of any other video game quite well, and the deep combat means that you can basically just, replay the levels at, harder difficulties to really just master it if you kind of like challenges. The arena mode can provide you with tens, like just hundreds of hours if you just love the, the ton of variety of things you can do. Maybe not like hundreds, because eventually you will do everything you can, but what you're looking at is well worth the money. It's like 20 or so euros, and it's a lot of bang for your buck, so it's very well worth it. The main issue with the game, I'd say, is also tied with its greatest strength, which is its learning curve. I've spent the entire video telling you how cool it is that the game has such deep combat, but unfortunately, the game doesn't really do a very good job of teaching you any of it at all. You'll find yourself shooting at this big giant guy over and over again, and find out that, because he has armor on, you have to hit him melee a few times, dodge his attack, walk behind him, do an execute, and then shoot him, and he'll eventually die. It's basically your responsibility to figure out how to play the game, and sometimes you're just left to yourself to, discover some of these deeper mechanics, because all the game does is teach you how to walk, shoot, and the simple FPS stuff. This isn't always a bad thing, because sometimes while you're in the middle of combat, just finding the right solution, like that Eureka effect, is insanely exhilarating, but it does get kind of annoying when it feels like the game is just messing with you. It's a great thing when a game makes you understand that you died because of your lack of skill, but when a game makes you die because of a mechanic that it never even told you existed, it feels insanely infuriating. That's basically one of the weaknesses of the game. The sound design is pretty okay overall. Much like the graphics, it isn't nothing special, but they get the job done. The gun sounds are okay, and in some instances great, and the gory explosion sounds are just music to your ears, as they should be. There are some things that should have sounds that just don't, but those are just minor things that you wouldn't even notice on a normal playthrough. The polish of the game is pretty okay, I'd say. Obviously, because of how janky the game is, it doesn't look like too professional, and also there are some bugs here and there, but it's functional, right? In my 32 hours of playtime, I've only encountered a game-breaking bug once. And because you can basically just restart every level, you're not really losing any, progress at all. So it wasn't really too much of a bother. There are some minor glitches, like you punch a guy, he lies on the ground, and then he just suddenly shoots up into the stratosphere. Or some weird shadow glitches here and there. But like, though those are a bit weird, I think it just adds to the sheer fucked up chaos of the game and just makes it a bit more crazy, which is a good thing in terms of Madness combat. The music is inconsistent, but just great in my opinion. At worst, you'll get soundtracks that are okay background noise, but at best, you get these awesome kick-ass soundtracks that make you feel cool as fuck as you just gun down waves of enemies, like in some sick-ass, action, scene in some movie, It's mostly mediocre, but when that sick song just kicks in, you are gonna have an insane time, just mowing people down. It's just insane. I would have to give this game a solid 8 out of 10. It's not for everyone in that it is quite niche, but if you want to feel like a badass, slaying hordes upon hordes of enemies with this just kick-ass soundtrack blasting in your ears, then this is the game for you. Buy it, get it in your Steam library because it is a lot of bang for your buck, and if it's on sale, be sure to pick it up ASAP. My name is Rhoku, and this has been my review for Madness Project Nexus. Goodbye.